Hardly welcome to all of you on our YouTube channel CA Sansar. I'm speaking Stella from the CA Sansar. So today we are going to talk about very interesting topic which is very much important, which is navigating the withholding landscape, a professional guide to TDS and TCS under GST. For that, Neena ma'am is here to explain the overall topic. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us and also giving a valuable time. So, Leela, ma'am, will be explaining very well and also in clear way so that we can understand the TDS and TCS under GST topic. Now, ma'am, I would like to invite you to share the thoughts on the today topic.
Thank you, Stella, for that amazing warm welcome. Thank you so much. And thank you, CS Ansar, for giving me yet one more opportunity to be on the esteemed channel. Um, Good evening, everyone. And as Stella said, today we will be talking about some very interesting concepts of TDS and TCS under GST. Now, as we all know, TDS and TCS are enshrined under Section 51 and Section 52 of the GST Act. These provisions were a part of the CGST Act when it was initiated in July 2017. However, it was not made operational at that point of time. The operation of these sections was delayed by a year and it was operationalized in October 2018. So, what are these provisions? Why are they contained? And why was the operation of these sections delayed and not started immediately? For this, first we need to understand the intent of including TDS and TCS provisions in the GST Act. Now, we all know that these TDS and TCS provisions are also there in the Income Tax Act. So, are these just a copy paste of the TDS TCS provisions contained in the Income Tax Act? The intent, was it the same? Uh, that is the primary thing that needs to be understood before we go into the details of TDS and TCS. Now, as far as TDS and TCS provisions under Income Tax Act is concerned, the intent is quite clear. The government wants to secure advance payment of taxes. However, when we come to GST, the intent is much wider. It is not merely a procedural appendage tool for the government to secure taxes. TDS and TCS provisions in the GST Act serve a much bigger purpose. The intention of including these provisions was to serve as a real time audit trail to the government for two big components of tax payment: government procurements and e commerce marketplace. So, if these intention and these provisions were so important, why not initiate it since the day the act was implemented? The reason was that TDS and TCS provisions contain minute level detailed reporting requirements. So, when GST was initiated in July 2017, it was thought that some time needs to be given to the industry as well as the portal to address to these detailed level reporting that TDS and TCS reporting requires, so that it serves the purpose of being the audit trail for these two sectors. Now, we come to the details of the section. TDS under GST is contained in section 51. So, who needs to deduct TDS while making the payments? Is it all the entities making payment? No. TDS deduction is restricted to government entities only at present, which includes local authorities and PSUs as well. Though originally intended only as a trail mechanism for government procurement, the scope is now widening. We'll come to that expansion of scope in a bit. Before that, let us understand the requirements that needs to be met for TDS to be deducted. Now, just because a supply is made to the government and the government is making payment, TDS will not be deducted. There are certain conditions that needs to be met. The primary is the threshold limit. For the TDS deduction to start, the contract value has to be above 2.5 lakh rupees. Now, you will notice that the term used in the act is contract value. This means that it cannot initiate if the contract value is less than 2.5 lakhs. And at the same time, even if it will automatically trigger once the contract entered with the government is exceeding 2.5 lakh, even though The contract may spread over a period of time, and invoices may be raised for smaller duration, say monthly or quarterly, and these invoices may be of a smaller amount. To give you an example, suppose government enters into a contract with, say, a person making supplies of stationery, and the contract is for the entire year, and the contract value is 3 lakh rupees, but these are to be supplied, say, on a monthly basis, and each invoice may be 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. A lot of times it is misunderstood that because these invoice values are small, TDS need not be deducted. That is not correct. Over here, the contract on the basis of which these invoices are raised, since that exceeds the threshold limit, TDS deduction will initiate from the very first invoice itself. This automatically also means that TDS deduction of 2.5 is also not governed by the policies of time of financial year. It is again contract based. And once this threshold limit is met, or TDS of 2% needs to be deducted by the pay. Now, another interesting thing is that if the supplier is located in one state and the place of supply is in a different state, then TDS provisions cannot be implemented or are not required to be implemented. This is done to avoid cross state remittance issues, so that government do not have to take and transfer money amongst each other. Now we come back to my original discussion, wherein I said that initially, though TDS provisions were intended for government entity only, the scope has now widened. And the first to come amongst it is TDS provisions have now been made applicable since October 2024 in such cases where a registered buyer buys metal scrap from another registered seller. That means if suppose one registered person is buying steel from another registered person, and they will have to deduct TDS again under the same conditions. The contract value has to exceed 2.5 lakhs and the deduction would be 2%. Why is this development significant? This development is significant because it shows that there is a widening of scope of the TDS provisions. Whereas initially it was restricted only to government entities, now private sector is also being included. This shows a shift towards sectoral compliance control. Now, before we come to the compliance provisions for these TDS, let me first talk about TCS. TCS provisions are contained in Section 52 of the GST Act. TCS provision applies to e-commerce operators collecting consideration on behalf of suppliers. That means if the e-commerce operator is collecting money on behalf of supplier, it would be required to collect TCS. Over here, there is no threshold limit. However, the only thing is that TCS has to be collected on net taxable supplies. That means if a supplier has made original supply of say 10 lakh, of which 1 lakh is returns, your TCS will be collected on the net value of 9 lakhs and not 10 lakhs. So that there are no provisions of returning and the rest of it. So on net taxable supplies, the e-commerce operator will be required to collect TCS from customers from whom it is collecting consideration on behalf of its own suppliers. The rate of TCS, originally it was 1%, now it has been reduced to 0.5%. Now, the discussion on TCS cannot be complete if we do not talk about deemed suppliers under Section 9, subsection 5. Why is it important? In that case, let us go back to Section 9, subsection 5. What does Section 9, subsection 5 says? Section 9, subsection 5 says that in case of notified services by e-commerce suppliers, the e-commerce supplier would be deemed to be a supplier. Let me explain it to you a bit in detail. Like government has under Section 9, subsection 5, Uber, then Zomato, Urban Company. These are some of the notified services. In this case, the government says that because they're supplying services to so many consumers, it is possibly not possible for them to keep a track of it. In that case, the e-commerce operator, that is the Uber or Zomato, or urban company will be deemed to be a supplier, and all provisions of GST Act would apply to them as if they were a supplier. Hence, the e-commerce supplier in these notified cases is required to pay GST at 18% as if it were a regular supplier. Now, question arises that since these notified services e-commerce operator are deemed to be suppliers, will provisions of TCS apply to them? Answer is no, because they're already paying 18% tax. Question, and they are being treated as a supplier. They themselves are being treated as a supplier. So any collection of tax on behalf of a supplier does not arise. It would lead to double compliance. So notified services e-commerce operators under 9 subsection 5 do not need to follow the provisions of section 52 pertaining to TDS. TCS. Now we come to compliance part of TDS as well as TCS. Now, persons collecting tax, TCS collectors and TDS deductors, they are required to furnish specified returns detailing this TDS and TCS by the 10th of the month, subsequent month for which taxes have been collected. That is, for the month of January, TDS return needs to be filed by 10th of February. So is that for the TCS suppliers. Deductors. TDS return form is GSTR 7, which the person deducting tax is required to file, and for TCS it is GSTR 8. Now, before I move on over here, I just want to clarify that there has been an amendment in GSTR 7 very recently. Earlier, these were summary returns. They were just required to give total figures of a supply on which TDS is deducted. Now, invoice wise detail is required to be filed as far as GSTR 7 is concerned. That means whichever government entity is deducting TDS, they will have to give a complete invoice wise breakup. What is the invoice? Who's the supplier? Place of supply against which TDS is deducted. That means the compliance part is also being made more and more detailed so that more and more information is available to the government. Now, as far as the supplier is concerned, for whom the tax has been deducted or whose tax has been collected, of course, as it is an income tax over here, also they can claim credit of that amount towards tax interest penalty. But how do they, just because the tax is deducted, are they eligible to claim a credit of it? This is the part where most of us miss out. It does not automatically become a part of your cash or ledger. Once the returns have been filed by TDS deductor or TCS collector, the same would reflect on the TDS TCS tab appearing on the supplier's portal. The supplier needs to click on the portal, examine this, and accept these details. Only when this part of accepting has been done will the money hit the cash ledger. Prior to that, it is not available for utilization. So if we miss out on this part, one might just think my TDS has deducted. Why am I not being able to claim? So this exercise definitely needs to be done. Now, it may happen that the details contained over here may sometimes not match with the details available in supply because of some mistake on the part of the person filing the return. In that case, the supplier rejects that particular mistaken invoice. It flows back to the deductor. They have to rectify the mistake in the subsequent month's return, and again it will reflect on the portal, and that is when they accept it. So this acceptance part is very important. I cannot emphasize enough that if you miss out on this part, you tend to lose the credit of that amount. Now, why would the deductor or the collector file return on time? Because for us to claim credit, it is important they file the return, because if they do not file the return, we do not see it on our portal. This is important because if they miss out, they also are subject to interest 18% and late fees. This is the reason that they also ensure that compliance is done on time. Now, this is in short the TDS provisions, the TCS provisions, and the compliance part. What is our role as chartered accountants in this entire thing? So this entire discussion clearly brings out that what originally started for government enterprises, TDS, and e-commerce operators, the TCS, is now slowly expanding its scope. Earlier it was summary level reporting, now it is detailed reporting. Earlier it was just restricted to government entity. Now private sector is also being brought into the scope. So we see that with all these changes and more possibly to come in future, who knows, our role is not restricted to merely matching of 2% or 0.5% deduction rates are correct or not. Now, as a chartered accountant, we are required to manage the entire digital life cycle of transactions to which these provisions of TDS and TCS would apply. One is required to check the contract, because merely checking the invoice does not give a clear idea whether TDS or provisions are applicable. The contract needs to be examined. It has to be ensured that the returns are filed on time. Also, it needs to be ensured that once the returns are filed, the person eligible to credit accepts the same on his system. If there's a mistake, get the mistake rectifying by rejecting it, and finally making sure the amount hits the cash ledger. So the entire process has to be governed for us to get the best out of these provisions. So this is all from my side on TDS and TCS provisions. If you have any queries, please feel free to reach out. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stella.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for simplify GST withholding for us, and also very well you said that and explain very easy way. And those are watching, if you guys having any doubts, you guys can comment in our comment section. Definitely, we will reply. Thanks a lot, ma'am, again.
Thank you, Stella.